Welcome back to another episode of Behind the Tech Desk. We're here again with another lecturer lesson from the one and only Tim Kitevski. Tim, how you doing today?
Good. Thanks for having me. This is quite nice. I like this setup.
Excellent. And I also forgot to introduce our co-host.
Hello, I'm Jake.
He's here too. And most importantly, the best co-host, Cacti the Cactus, returns again.
Hopefully not to fall over this time.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's pretty awkward. It happens a lot.
Happens so much.
Who gave you cacti? Where'd you get cacti from?
We'll never tell.
Here's me right about to tell. So, Tim, tell us a little bit about what you do on campus.
So I'm a senior animation games lecturer. I've been here for a number of years now. So, in that role, basically I lecture classes on animation, various things about animation studio mostly these days, so the bigger classes. So that's getting people into the mode and the zone of producing animation, computer graphic stuff in a team environment, in a more of a simulated production space, which is cool. But in addition to that, the last couple of years I've been kind of trying to get more connection of our students into industry with like networking events and these kinds of connection scenarios. I've also helped to get a few students jobs, actually I don't do a lot of reaching out in that sense. I've had a lot of people reach out to me going, hey, you're an animation guy at this place that has animation students. Do you have any people that would...
So you're an animation guy at this place?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically like that, like cold, not calls, but cold emails just kind of coming either directly to me or through kind of student services at the front, and they forward it to me. And through that, I've gotten a few people jobs, which I'm very grateful to do. It's awesome to see that kind of final connection there with the students. But in terms of the networking events, it's a thing fairly recently that I've been putting quite a lot of energy into. Running, it's the way, what I've called it, what I've labeled it, is animation and computer graphics networking event, SAE, technically, SAE Perth, blah, blah, blah. It's a very long name. It's a branding problem.
Give it a really awkward acronym that's hard to say.
I definitely need to figure that out. But anyway, so I've been doing that for a few years, and we normally run it across the road from here on campus, actually, at Planet Royale. And last time, Jake, obviously you helped us out, so that was awesome. But that's pretty successful. We've gotten really solid turnout from local industry practitioners in the animation and games areas. We've had a few professionals do presentations, and this last one was the best one yet. We actually had some industry professionals do folio feedback sessions, and we had a really good response from that. It wasn't just our students as well. There's a bunch of people who were either students of SAE or students of other institutes, or just people who weren't necessarily studying but were like computer graphics or animation practitioners, like small scale kind of stuff. And they came and they got feedback from this range of industry people, and they really enjoyed the opportunity. And the industry people did too. They were like, it was awesome to connect, and
It was great because I obviously I was there and I was helping set up the equipment and stuff, and I did manage to get around and have a chat to a few of the industry professionals who were there, and so well versed and so well knowledged. It was absolutely, because I often go to these student events with quite an open mind. I'm not an animation guy at all. I think the most I've dabbled into it is doing the little animations we have for this podcast.
We could really use some help.
If there's any animation students who want to help us.
So that's why I'm here. I see what it is.
Yeah, we're buttering you up.
Right. Okay. Makes sense now.
It was very interesting. I always go with this feeling that, SAE Perth is it's quite a large institute. And I often forget how well connected everybody at SAE is, from ground floor staff at student services and the tech desk all the way up to senior lecturers.
Totally. Yep.
It absolutely should be something that is expected, but I'm continually blown away by the caliber that they are.
For sure. I mean, so it's interesting because, as a bit of a historical thing, because I'm basically part of the furniture. I've been here so long now, but back in the day, actually, when I started, or I think just after I started, or before I started, we actually did have someone dedicated to the role of doing basically what I've been doing with these networking events, essentially connecting with not just connecting with industry, but connecting with industry to help our students with these kinds of more active events. We have some people who work on all of our campuses who are industry liaison coordinators, which is their official role. And they help students connect with studios for internships and stuff, which is a very specific role. But that's different from what this role used to be that we had on campuses. That, for whatever reason, kind of went away after, I think, not very long, actually. But it's been a constant source of my own personal frustration because, I teach these students and they come to the end of their programs and, especially when they're, have really quality portfolios, it's like, cool, now where do you go? Now how do you get to your next step? And it's like, good luck is basically what we've been doing up until now. So these last couple of years I've been saying to myself, you know what? Stuff it, I'll just do it myself. I know people and I'll make friends with more people and know even more people, and then through those connections I'll be able to get students connected. So that's, again, so far worked out pretty well, and it seems to be just building on each time we do it. So
yeah, absolutely.
And those networks are such an important thing to build in any kind of industry that is creative, and even outside of creative industries. And it's probably one of the hardest parts of it as well.
It is. No, totally. I mean, I can speak for my students quite authoritatively on this because I was this. But animation people and games, probably even more so, are very introverted, to say the least.
Yeah.
So getting out there and talking to other human people, especially to their actual faces, as opposed to...
I hate that.
Exactly, as opposed to like on Discord or whatever, which is all also really important. And we do quite a lot of that here as well. We've got a Discord server for SA Perth. Which, is also quite successful. But bridging the gap from, the digital or the theoretical even oftentimes to the actual in-person is a huge thing. Because I know that when I was studying, it was probably the most daunting thing of like, okay, I know, I've got a pretty good set of skills, I feel, but how do I connect that with human people who run studios or who can get me jobs or whatever? Hopefully I'm making some difference in that space, and so far it seems to be some ways towards that goal.
Absolutely, and it's also one of those things where it's not just SAE students, it's kind of the whole community has an opportunity to get together.
Totally.
And when the whole community gets together and does something like that, it benefits everybody that's in it.
No, absolutely.
Which is hugely important. I don't think it can be understated, really.
No, I mean, and that's, sorry, just to jump off that, I feel that's, a huge part of my motivation to be doing this is, obviously, I'm biased with my students. I want them to succeed. But, especially the local Perth, creative space, creative community environment, whatever you want to call it, I feel like has so much potential, and there's these kinds of avenues which don't really exist. So if I can help our students, that's obviously primary my focus, and that's awesome. But if I can help just the general industry in addition, that's also like a bonus. I totally agree.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not super connected with the Perth animation community or anything, but even just speaking from the live sound community and the music community in Perth, so much talent lying around, and I imagine it's exactly the same.
No, totally. Yeah.
And it's crazy because there's just so much raw talent and so many skills around that we kind of just need to all help each other and band together to try and grow it all together.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
But what would you say is your specific, if you have one, of course, skill set with animation? What do you specialize in?
Sure. So my background is from video games, hence why I'm an animation/video game senior lecturer. But I worked for a good number of years in video games doing 3D art. So mainly environment art, prop art, surface art, general layout stuff. Some vehicle art I did for a while. Never professionally character art, but I've been in the last few years kind of really doing my own stuff in character art. So at this point, I'm kind of like a 3D art generalist, I guess, for I guess one of a better descriptor. But through that, both the industry career and what I've been doing, in this job, getting my students to do, I've definitely got a fairly broad technical understanding as much as the kind of the artistic and creative stuff, which I actually enjoy. I enjoy both of those things. maybe in equal measure. I don't know. Some days I'm like, yeah, the creative stuff is fun, and other days I'm like, this is frustrating. And some days I'm like, the technical stuff is fun, and other days it's frustrating. So I flip between the two. But yeah, that kind of 3D art, again, the computer graphics side of things, hence why I've labelled the networking event such. That's kind of where my focus lies, really. Yep.
What kind of software do you use? Because I know of like Blender, ZBrush, Maya are three big popular ones in animation, 3D modeling.
Yep. So Blender's great. Blender's not what we use on campus. Blender is something that is it's a free software, hence why a lot of people use it. And I've got I've not personally used it myself a whole lot, but it is certainly improved over the last few years. We don't use it on campus mainly because what our primary goal is, and certainly my primary goal as the I guess the most senior animation person here in Perth anyway, is to get our students the most ready for what they're going to be encountering when they leave here and actually get work, which is that software. Now Blender is certainly used by certain studios and small scale teams and stuff, and that's great. But the real fact is, if you can learn the most core industry standard software, in this case it's Maya, which is what we teach, you can transfer that if you need to. Right. And I can speak to that because I learnt Maya when I was coming through, and then I got a job, one day that needed me to use this other program called 3ds Max, which we also have on campus, which we taught for a while. We can teach it if we need to, but we often don't. But anyway, so I had to learn this. I had to use this software in a job that I got, and they knew that I didn't know it. And they're like, "No, it's fine. You'll pick it up. We'll teach you the basics. It'll take you 2 weeks, whatever." Yeah. And it was true. Yeah. I did. Yeah. And Blender is absolutely the same. So anyway, I know it's a bit of a tangent, but that's
that's good. It's good.
It's kind of an important point, I think, just to highlight that to some people, because they're like, "Well, Blender's free. Why don't you use Blender?" It's like, there's reasons. Yeah. Not because we hate it, but because of these things that I just said.
And that's the thing, and that extends across all disciplines at SA, is that we have all this really high tech, fancy equipment, and we have all these high tech, fancy programs, but really it's the core industry standard, especially like from our perspective, audio, you're using Pro Tools a lot, Ableton a lot, and Logic a lot. In film, you're using DaVinci, Adobe, Premiere, or Adobe. I can pronounce things well. Like we really do focus on that core industry stuff. So sorry, continue on that.
So anyway, so Maya is certainly the main 3D software, I guess, at the core level. Then there's, as you mentioned, ZBrush. We've got a bunch of licenses for that, and more of our students are using it, which is really cool to see. We also have, as you mentioned, the Adobe suite. In that, for animation and computer graphics students, we normally have them use Photoshop, certainly. Yep. Not really Illustrator. That's more of a design thing, but more of the Substance suite. So Photoshop and the Substance suite, which is Substance Painter, Substance Designer, Substance Sampler, and there's a couple of other things that come in the Substance package that we don't really use because it's just some stuff that Adobe threw in just to try and make it seem more fancy, which is what Adobe tends to do. But anyway, and then we use Unreal Engine.
Yep.
Unreal is obviously, if anyone knows what it is or has heard of it before, it's a game engine powering things like Fortnite and so on. But it's a free to use suite of, well, it's not a suite, but it's an entire package rather that is effectively like a rendering environment as well as a game system. So if you want to build an interactive thing for, again, a game or some sort of interactive experience, you can do that. But you can also, and I've had many students use it quite successfully, using it as a standalone rendering package to produce animations.
Yep.
So that's a really, really cool part of our animation set of software that we take our students through. From really trimester 1, they get exposure to the vast majority of these software. Yep. And then as part of the structure of our course, from trimester 2 onwards, they choose a specialization, and then they choose where they want to focus their attention to software, but also hard skills of like, okay, I'm going to be an animator, so I need to learn the fundamentals and the 12 principles and really kind of hammer my ability to identify and apply performance to motion and all this kind of stuff. But the Unreal package specifically really cuts across so many those different areas because it's such a dynamic piece of software, which I love. And I've used it myself in making my own kind of little games and stuff. So as just a piece of software, I really enjoy using it. And I think that's for the main ones. That's it. We do have a few others. We have Houdini, which is a really hugely powerful program for VFX people.
Yep.
We don't have heaps of students use it, mainly because heaps of students don't typically choose VFX because it's a pretty intimidating thing to do. Mainly because there's just so much to get your head around. But the really technical, I should say, not tech, but technical savvy and interested students do tend to dive in. We actually have one at the moment. I don't know if I'm allowed to name him, so I won't. But anyway, we have one student at the moment who's putting attention to that, and he's doing really well. He's in trimester 3, focusing on Houdini and just smashing out some amazing work. So he looks like he's gonna have a pretty bright future if he continues on with it. And yeah, I think Harmony as well. Sorry,
Harmony,
forgot about the 2D people. Sorry. So there's, and obviously within Adobe there's Animate and Harmony, current of our 2 main 2D animation software. And to be honest, they're huge. So we have a good number, probably more. Well, it depends, but probably on average at least as many people focusing on focused 2D practice as there are focusing on kind of more computer graphics-y stuff like 3D or VFX or whatever. And that encompasses both 2D animation as well as background illustration, character design. Across the suite, we have quite a few students interested in all those areas. So it's a good diverse range of interests we have in our students and our software.
And that really just showcases what it's like here. It really doesn't cover every base to make sure that you know exactly what you want and what you want to get out of the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about learning a bit of everything so you can really find that thing that you really, really enjoy and then specialize into it, right?
Yep. Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah. Listen, we're almost ready to finish up here, but I do like to ask one question before we tie up these ones, and it's if someone was about to get into the animation industry or start studying at SAE, what's a piece of advice that you would give them?
I would say, that's a good question. That's a really good question. I would probably say one thing to keep in mind if you're intending on studying this kind of work is to find something that really, really interests you. Now, that sounds super vague, but like something that excites your passion, I guess, that exists out there currently in media, because that's essentially what you're wanting to be, is a producer of media, and use that as your North Star. Yeah. Right? Because, that's what I did to get into this industry. Many years ago, I was super enthralled and excited by the works of, they don't really make games anymore, which is a bit sad, but Valve Software. So they, for those of you who are quite young, which is probably most of our students, but they made a very old game now called Half-Life back in the day.
Those were the days.
The original Half-Life was a huge groundbreaking thing. It like totally flipped on its head what video games were in terms of how they told stories. In fact, because it told a story, because up until then you had like Doom and Quake and Unreal and all these things which were just shooty bang bangs, which is fun. Like I got nothing against those kinds of experiences in games, but Half-Life really was like, you know what if we tried to actually tell a story? Because Valve actually employed like an author, Mark Lador, I'm pretty sure is his name. He wrote Half-Life, Half-Life 2, Portal, all these things. Now he's gone off and is doing his own thing. But that really inspired me because I'm like, oh, wow. So not only can I get stories from, movies and stuff, but games can do this, and they do it like kind of better in some ways. I mean, that's not really necessarily 100% factual, but like it feels like a different experience, I guess. It's not something better or worse.
A much more interactive one for sure.
Exactly. It's a really compelling, all-encompassing, immersive, to use buzzwords, kind of experience. And that just got me super psyched. I'm like, I don't know what I want to do, but I want to be involved in that. And the 3D side, the pretties, the art side is ultimately what I got into, and haven't really looked back since. So, while I've been teaching, like I said, I've made a kind of a game on my own a number of years ago now, and I'm dabbling and doing my own thing on the side as much as I can, but like that passion has never gone away. And that's the biggest thing I'd say. You just have to hold on, because I've seen many students who come in and either they either don't have one to start with, or they find one and it's not really one, they just kind of picked it because they felt like they had to, and they just drift away. And that will happen. Because that constant driving force, again, that North Star that's pulling you towards that ultimate goal of this career and whatever it is that you want to do, that has to be there. If that ever drifts from your gaze, if you like, it's going to be a huge barrier to succeed. I don't want to say you will definitely fail if you don't have that, but you're going to be, put it the other way, you're going to be much more likely to succeed if you have that. Despite the challenge, because it's, this is a difficult industry to not just to get into, but to just skill up in. Like if you've never touched Maya or ZBrush or Photoshop or whatever, and you're like, I want to do animation, I want to do games, I want to do art. It's like, cool. But there's going to be a whole lot of learning and a whole lot of a lot of failure as well.
Oh yeah,
and to push you through that failure to get you to the point where you can actually be a functional professional with a portfolio that speaks to that. You have to have that push, and that push doesn't have to primarily, but just my own experience and my own advice would be to have that thing that drives you along, which is an industry work or a company or a studio or even a individual practitioner, which you're like, that's what I want to do.
Yep.
That's the girl, that's the guy, that's the stuff that I want to try and produce in my career. And if that changes as well, that's fine. But as long as you have something like that, that's really pulling you through. I think that's probably the single most important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And like Dale and I had a very similar experience, well, pretty much all the way through. We were musicians, weren't really sure what we were going to do in the music industry, came to SAE to study studio engineering, weren't really sure what we were going to do after SAE, ended up in live sound, loving live sound and working live sound since we left SAE. But the primary core focus was that we wanted to be involved in the music industry somehow. And that led us to finding our passion for doing live sound and things like that. So it's not necessarily like, it's absolutely a key point to have that North Star, but make sure you know what that North Star is. Exactly.
It has to be like a pretty specific kind of thing. It's not just, I want to be creative. It's like, okay,
there's so many different ways you can do it.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to chase after a goal that's not really defined in itself, right? But that was super insightful. Thanks so much for giving us your time and some of your wisdom. Don't forget to give it a like, give it a subscribe, share the video around, talk to your fellow students about it, and most importantly, don't forget, the future is you.